Start. 4 o'clock. Open this one 4 o'clock. It says a cheat on me.
All right, yeah. Are you in the dunk tank again?
Well.
It's a yes or no answer. It's really not a well.
Yes, what time?
Yes, what time?
I'm. Well, whether I'll be able to breathe through my nose by then. But I've got something going around now. So.
Sounds like a legitimate excuse or illegitimate.
Okay. Did you already hit start, Justin? Okay, so
Okay.
we are moving into our city council work session. We have one item on our agenda that is 2026 revised and 2027 proposed budgets with Laura.
Okay, so our budget conversations continue. If you'll pull up the PowerPoint, Justin, when you have a minute, please ignore, I got the date changed on the cover page. I did not get the type of meeting we were having. So this is a work session, not finance and administration. And you can start with the first slide. The first slide is really included here. Back on July 8th, we started talking about sort of 5 guiding questions that are going to shape our 27 budget process. Where are we today? What has changed? What are we trying to accomplish? How should we invest our resources? And how do we ensure long-term fiscal sustainability and resilience? So I want to keep those front and center as we go through the process, continuing through final budget adoption in September. So next slide. Really this evening, what I would like to do, I will consider tonight's work session a success. If we kind of talk through, I'll give you some highlights about where we stand with the general fund compared to where we were on July 8th. I think we've made some good progress. I hope you had an opportunity to review, and I know the packet was late yesterday. But trying to take a new approach to some decision packages and presenting opportunities for solving for particularly some of the supplemental requests in some different ways. Same methodology in many cases, just a little bit more transparent for you and I think for the public about how we're presenting those issues and what the trade-offs might be. So some guidance, there's one decision package in particular related to the solid waste utility fee that we would like some direction on this evening, and I'll explain that when we get to that point. We'll touch briefly on the revised 2026-27 capital improvement program, cover that more in depth in terms of any specific questions on projects next week at the Finance and Administration Committee meeting. But again, want to just generally reintroduce what we have in the street, stormwater, and Parks and Recreation program. And then finally, there was information in the packet on some of the other funds outside of the general fund, which is our operating fund, and the funds that relate to our capital improvement program, where we, although the revenues and expenses may not be particularly significant when considered alone, they provide and support some really valuable services and things that have been a high priority to the council, such as Mission Magazine, the Mental Health Co-Responder Program, and some of those. So we'll review those, and then again, we'll pick this, won't pick it back up. We'll continue next week. So there'll be additional information in the packet this Friday. So starting on the general fund highlights, included in your clipped packet is your general fund summary. The full packet includes the general fund summary, revenue detail, and all of the line item budgets for the department. If you're so interested and inclined to go through every line item for every operating department. You may remember that when we looked at the general fund summary on July 8th, that if we went to the bottom line, that excess fund balance, that number was negative of about $242,000 in July. We've worked since July to bring that number to the good in the amount of about $90,000. So that's a variety of things. One being a fairly easy fix. We were double reserving on some funds, so that helped. But we've also been back through all of the line items the departments have reviewed. We've made adjustments in revenues and expenditures. There's not a lot of significant change in the actual numbers that you see. But there's a lot of work that happened since July 8th to get us to the point where we're $90,000 to the good. This balanced budget, also you may recall that we talked about some of the supplemental requests, particularly the server and the switches. And so the technology functions, those have been incorporated, that was about $90,000, $95,000 in cost. Those have been included in this general fund summary budget that is presented. So those have moved from the supplemental list to this base budget list. Effectively, we're looking at about 0% revenue growth in 2027. Why? Couple of things. We're accounting for a one-time revenue from the Encore land acquisition in the amount of $250,000 that will hit in 2026. And then elimination of the public safety sales tax, which we've talked about, that happens in 2027. And so that's about $200,000 a year. So it kind of ends up being a wash when you don't look at all of the other factors. We haven't really made any changes to the assumptions that we shared with you in any of the major revenue streams for 2026 or 27, things that we discussed at the July 8th meeting. The growth in expenses is estimated at about 5%. That's consistent with where we saw it at July 8th. That's primarily driven by personnel. The largest expense line item that we have in the general fund is personnel. It's estimated in 2027 to be about 66% of our total general fund budget. A target that we aim for is typically between 65 and 70%. So it's a big expense, but we're still sort of within that target range that's viewed as acceptable. The government accounting standards agencies and the credit rating agencies don't have any specific requirements as it relates to that percentage. They look at a lot of factors in that case. But I think really what that means is the departments are holding expenses. I will say on the personnel side, the numbers that you see here, and I think we touched on this on July 9th, assume that we are fully staffed throughout the course of the year. So there's opportunities for savings through attrition or position vacancies. It also includes a 10% increase in health insurance renewal, which we won't have until October. So assuming that we can bring health insurance in that range or better, there are some savings that could be naturally occurring over the course of this project. We've also, I think, been conservative. One of the things we've talked about is we've had probably over budgeted in the past for building permits, for example. So we've really tightened that down and looked at, years where we may not have big projects coming in. But we had in 2026, one of the things also driving revenues is we did have payment for Encore's building permit fees that came in. So as I mentioned, included in this base budget, which we're working from now, are the 4 network switches, 1 server, and then this was new to the supplemental list, and I failed to address it on July 8th, but a reclassification of an existing regular part-time position at the community center. So regular part-time for us is 30 hours a week. It makes the position benefits eligible. So we're asking to reclassify that to a 40-hour position. It's been 40 hours, it's been 30 hours, it's been 40 hours. We've kind of swung back and forth. I think we have finally figured out what the right mix is, and we have a person who's interested in that position. So the delta to fund that, the benefits are already being paid. So the delta is really just 10 additional hours a week for that. Next slide, please. Well, I'll stop there. Any questions?
Questions for Laura so far? Yeah, Wanda?
I just have a question that maybe I've overlooked it, but do we get revenues from the court?
We do.
Would
So
that be under police fines?
it's incorporated with, actually the court revenues show up in the service charge category. If you look at the revenue detail, I didn't give you the handout, but the revenue detail is in the packet. Court.
Yeah.
It's
Page 25 of your electronic packet, I think, for 2027 anyway.
court cost. 24. Court costs are
25, yeah.
estimated at about $30,000 a year.
That we
Well, that's
take in?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
The line item is on page 27, sorry. That's the summary page.
Okay. This is then a revised supplemental list. We looked at a very similar list on July 8th, but as I mentioned, Two of those items that were included have now been incorporated in the base budget. We've also done some additional work and investigation, and two additional items on this list: the firearms and holsters in the police department and the replacement of 20 AEDs citywide are not recommended to be funded out of the general fund. The firearms would be funded out of the forfeiture fund, which is our funds that are collected through forfeiture of equipment, cash, other things through the police department, and can really only kind of be spent on one-time things. And then the replacement of the AEDs, we would replace out of the opioid settlement fund, both of which have sufficient revenues in those funds to cover the purchase of those supplemental items. So that leaves us with a list of supplemental requests to be considered, including the classification and compensation study and implementation dollars, financial management software, website update, including ADA compliance. And I would say really website update is probably a misnomer. It's really, we would be looking at a complete overhaul and probably transition to a new website provider. Replacement of the street sweeper and public works, and replacing one Ford F-550 truck in the Public Works Department, and replacement of three. Originally, the supplemental request included replacement of 6 of 7 admin vehicles in the police department. As we've looked at narrowing that, our recommendation would be replacement of 3 of the 2015 vehicles, replacing those with hybrid vehicles. We can't go full electric because we don't have electric charging capabilities in this parking lot right now. But as we look at longer term structure for the department, and not knowing exactly the number of officers' vehicles, all of those kinds of things, it does make some sense when we look at the repair cost on particularly those older vehicles to look at replacing, and it also accomplishes some of this. It gives us the opportunity in a replacement vehicle to look at moving some of the sustainability initiatives that we have. Mayor, I think Councilmember Vaughn had a question.
Sorry, Mr. Han. Yep.
I just wanted to know, so these older vehicles, what do we do with them? Do we sell them?
Yes, we typically put them on a Purple Wave auction site and sell them.
So then we recoup some of the
Some of
cost
that, and I'll talk about, that's in one of the decision packages, and I'll
Okay.
talk about sort of where no, that's fine, where the offset comes. So the list of supplementals has been narrowed even below the almost $1.2 million. And even though on this sheet, the vehicles are shown equipment reserve and replacement, that's anticipated to be a transfer from the general fund into the equipment reserve and replacement fund. So next slide, please.
Yeah, Debbie.
Oh, yep.
We still have an ECBB fund?
We do. We have to maintain a separate fund where we deposit the transient guest tax revenues that we collect. That's a statutory requirement. So
And
we
that's
do, and
under
that's,
that fund?
it's what?
It's under that fund that we're getting the transient, all those?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And we'll touch on that. It's included in the other funds.
Okay.
So as I mentioned, what we presented to you, or what we have for consideration, are really 6 different decision packages. Those were included in your packet. I also copied them again individually in the stack for you. But the first one, as I mentioned, is one that I would look for some additional guidance on this evening, and that relates to the solid waste utility rate adjustment. So as you all know, we have a citywide contract with GFL that provides residential trash, recycling, and yard waste and once a month bulky item collection to about 2,970 single family residential households throughout the city. And so the cost of that, we've been able to negotiate very cost-effective rates for our residents by having that citywide contract. Other cities, you may have everybody, HOAs or individual homeowners, negotiate with their own hauler. You also have more heavy trucks on your streets more often when you do that. So we've, for a long time, had this contract. We have cost shared with the residents but we have not, even though there have been rate increases consistently every year, at least since 2023. Well, since 2023, the city has absorbed 100% of those rate increases. We have not passed any of that along to the residents. Part of that discussion that we've had is as we've looked at mill levy increases or other things, it was kind of balancing that out. But what I showed here on your presentation is going back to 2023. You can see the total annual rate per household. You can see what the resident has paid, and that $193.07 is certified on your property tax bill. So it's paid as a part of your property tax bill and then distributed back to the city. That hasn't changed. So through this year, that's stayed at that 193. So you can see back in 2023, that represented about 92% of the total bill. So because the city has absorbed that, obviously the percentage that the resident has been paying has decreased over time. This year, they're paying about 84% of that total bill. We would recommend that we look at adjusting the monthly rate that's charged to each single family household by $1.50 a month, which is $18 a year, to bring them up. So they would be paying back at about 89% of the total estimated for 2027, or $211.08. That provides somewhere in the neighborhood of $25,000 to $30,000 of relief in the general fund that could be used to fund some of these other supplemental priorities. The reason we would need direction on that by August is that that's a special assessment, something that county considers a special assessment, and it has to be certified to the county by August 25th instead of by October 1st, like the rest of our budget does. So if you were interested in pursuing that, we would need to bring forth a resolution for you to consider in August to make that rate change. So why don't we stop there? Answer any questions, thoughts, reactions to that rate increase proposal.
Questions or views on that, anyone? Yeah, Ben?
Yeah, I think that's extremely modest. I think as we've seen other municipalities nearby talking about whether they want to do single hauler, municipal contracts and things, it's clear that just having the single hauler contract in place is a massive savings. I think, on the numbers, the $1.50 is about right for the inflation and to catch back up with where we've been. Yeah, I wouldn't particularly be averse to pushing a little bit more of the tab onto the residents, but probably not the whole thing.
Other thoughts? Yes, Sam, then Debbie?
Yeah, I'm generally supportive of this. I just looked it up. Our neighbors in Merriam, next year will pay $22.87. So we're still about $5 cheaper than our neighbors. So, man, that seems like a really good deal for the residents here. So that's all I have. I'm supportive of this.
How many variety of haulers are there within all the apartments? Do they each have one, or do they share, or how does that work?
They're each responsible for contracting with their own hauler, and Robin, if she were here, could probably tell you better, because if you trash haulers have to be licensed, they have to get a business license. So I don't know how many other haulers are licensed. Do you have a sense?
Probably 4 or 5. There's not many in the metropolitan area, so kind of the big ones: GFL, Waste Management. Yeah,
Republic, yeah.
Republic, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, Wanda?
I just have another. You're saying that I'm just clarifying.
Hmm?
So you're saying that the apartments aren't part of the city?
They're not part of this contract. So this contract only applies to single family households.
Resident. Okay. So if all of the apartments and us went into an agreement, would that be beneficial, or is that too much of a hassle, or it wouldn't be any good for us? What have we thought about that? Have
I
we?
mean, we've talked in the past, I don't know that we've looked at bringing the multifamily complexes. It might be something we could look at. I have no idea what they're paying. I'm guessing some of those fees are higher because if you think about the first of the month when apartments turn over and what dumpsters in and around multifamily complexes might look like with furniture, I don't know, but certainly we could explore that. I know one of the things that the Sustainability Commission in the past has been interested in is trying to encourage recycling programs at the multifamily. And I think we've had some conversations around that haven't been particularly successful in getting that off the ground. I think they end up with sort of commingled. You'll remember too that we also started offering the cardboard recycling for which I believe we're still offering for our downtown businesses and some other locations. And that's incorporated as part of our annual contract as well.
Mayor, may I?
Oh, yeah, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I admit I meant to look up multifamily costs and didn't get there. I looked at like HOAs in other cities, and I think even with this increase, we would, as Sam found, be cheaper than really every surrounding municipality. Only a few HOAs out there would even beat the rate that we're offering. I assume that with multifamily, the main advantage is just like working with a city contract. You've got a contract for a year. You don't have to deal with individuals, and so that brings the price and the complexity down. I also assume that because of the way multifamily trash is handled, which is like usually a central compactor, like one stop, maybe two for the whole complex type of thing. It's really a whole different service than single family residential. So I don't know. I feel like we'd just be sort of rearranging deck chairs if we picked up the multifamily contract, but I'm always open to it.
So if we wanted to make this year, then I would suggest that maybe we have a conversation going into next year about we look at setting a percentage of the total annual rate that we charge so that we're not doing this sort of up and down sort of every year. That helps make it, I think, the communication a little clear, and it certainly helps the calculations a little bit clearer.
Sounds like folks are generally supportive.
Okay, so we'll bring back an action item next week. It will be a resolution so that then we can proceed to certify that on the tax bill. Okay, next slide, please. Again, as I mentioned, this sort of decision package approach is new for 2027. It was helpful, at least for me,
Yeah, I do too.
to wrap my head around. This is a lot of what happens, I think, in my brain and other staff's brain when we put the budget together for you, but we don't always do a good job of articulating the benefits, the trade-offs, how it connects to different things. So the next sort of decision package number 2, and again, we'd probably be looking for would like to run through them all this evening, get some general feedback. We'll bring these back for clearer direction next week. I will tell you, we don't need all of these strategies to fund the things that are on this recommended supplemental list. So there's an opportunity also to blend some of these, but I want to just kind of walk through. So the budget decision package number 2, investing in the human infrastructure was a really strong theme at the council retreat that we had back in May. And it has been since 2021 that we've done, 2017 really, that we did a full-blown classification compensation study that was updated in 2021. We implemented the STEP plan in the police department last year, 18 months ago, but it's time for us to do that comprehensive look at the rest of the organization. Also, making sure the STEP plan is consistent with the market, but we've made a significant investment there. So if we think about the investment that we make in infrastructure like streets and stormwater and parks, I like to think about this as an investment in our human infrastructure. And we can't do what we do without that investment in the city's human infrastructure. So the thought and the recommendation here is to consider a reduction in the CIP transfer in both 2026 and 2027 by $100,000. And I'm going to show you what that looks like on the street program here in just a minute, which would be budget neutral in the general fund. So we would, if if this is something you wanted to consider, we would shift those dollars out of the transfer and those would be reallocated across the personnel line items. The benefits, obviously, we're investing in recruitment, particularly retention. I think at this point, I think one of the things that we have seen is as we've had turnover, we've had to hire below or above the minimum of our current ranges to attract the caliber of employees that we want. So probably, in my estimation, again, I could be proved wrong by the study, we're going to be more balancing some of the longer tenured employees. And then just realigning ourselves with the market. Improves our compensation competitiveness, strengthens our organizational capacity, maintains our service quality. Obviously, in the short term, that would reduce annual capital funding, and it may slow future infrastructure investment. So I want to jump ahead. In your packet, you have the 5-year CIP spreadsheets. They look like this. So if you'll pull that out, the first one is stormwater is on top. But if you flip over, you'll see 2 different examples of the street program plan. The first one included is if we left the transfers at the $850,000 that they are, as they're being shown in your general fund summary budget. You can see that we're positive in the street program plan until we get to 2029. 2030 and 2031. That's the big CARS projects in those years that are driving and flipping us upside down. We've talked about that. We've talked about the fact that we still have things to solve for as it relates to those large CARS expenditures and the balance of those expenses with our maintenance of our residential street program. The second example that we're showing you is if you were to reduce that street transfer by $100,000 in 26 and 27, you'll see we go upside down same year by an additional $200,000. I mean, everything else is staying the same. We still have 2.5 years to solve for an issue that's going to exist whether we reduce that transfer or not. So we wanted to just make sure, because I know as we've looked at that internally, we want to make sure that we're not creating a situation where we're running so thin on fund balance as it relates to our street program that we couldn't deal with unanticipated expenditures. You know, one of the things, Fairway is actually recommending a 4 mil property tax increase for their budget this year. And that the primary, really the only driver behind that is increase in their capital project expenses. And they're not able to keep up with that program. So we've seen some of that. We've been able to manage that. So we never want to run so thin on any of our capital infrastructure projects that we don't have the ability to kind of manage that.
And Laura, that does put us pretty thin for 2028. How do we feel about our 2028 numbers on project costs? Do we feel like that already includes like an accelerator for rising costs, et cetera?
I think you have, I mean, the estimates that we have on our CARS projects and other things have inflators in there.
Okay.
Again, who knows?
Right.
3 years. I mean, a lot of what's driving what we saw, you know, with the Johnson Drive project that came in over your engineer's estimate was asphalt prices, right? Driven by gas and oil prices. So who knows where that will be by 28 or 29. We have other places where we can really begin to adjust that as we get to 2028. Yes, 2028 might be a little thin, but we've carried over a lot of those other things.
Okay.
I just have a question. So what happens if we recoup that money off of the mission where we've had no income? Is it possible that we're going to get money, and would that help this situation at all?
It doesn't help on the street side, but when we get to the CIP and the stormwater side, I'll kind of talk through that. Yes, the repayment of back taxes would certainly has a much bigger impact. It has a slight impact in the general fund just for general property taxes. which has been reflected in your general fund summary. That's about $133,000 that I think is just property taxes.
And that's because the big piece is the stormwater.
The big piece,
fee,
it's
right?
$1.2 million in stormwater special assessments that are due. Now.
Get $1 million too, is that what you're saying?
Uh-huh. Yep. So thoughts, reactions to decision package number 2.
Any further comments, anyone? Yeah, Cheryl.
Well, I think, one of the things that we need to think about, it's not only retaining people, it's if you lose people, you are going to have to regenerate, retrain. And, it's nice that our community loves our people and we don't want to lose them. So I'm in support of this.
Okay. All right, moving on to decision package number 3. Again, what we'll do when we come back next week is the general direction that I hear, we'll incorporate that into a new budget so you can see the bottom line impact of what you've talked about, and we'll kind of pull those levers. Decision package number 3, invest one-time revenues in strategic priorities. So last month we talked about, and we will be bringing forward an action item next week to declare a couple of parcels surplus, city-owned parcels surplus, and we would expect to go through a sealed bid process. At least we know in one of those parcels there's been specific interest. The other one we're still investigating the opportunity to plat the one parcel into 2 potentially. But we're going to go ahead and declare it surplus. Our recommendation there would be to use those property sale proceeds to implement a new financial management software system, which actually has been in and out of the budget since 2014. Complete the update to the city's website, and then potentially reserve any remaining proceeds for future public safety technology needs. If you look at your supplemental list and you look at future needs coming at us in 2028 is going to be replacement of the police department's radio system and likely their records management system. But these are things that I think it makes sense for us to use those one-time revenues for one-time expenses. But we would come back to you, obviously, in any of those cases with a specific proposal, but that I think that would give us, depending on how many of those parcels we were able to sell, I think that's going to get us ahead. Definitely would cover the financial management software and the website updates and would get us ahead for the 2028 budget and looking at some of those other larger public safety technology needs.
Yeah, and Laura referenced 2014 on the financial management software. I mean, Debbie might remember that, but I know my entire time on council, it's been on the supplemental request list and has never made it to the top. So,
Justin and Christine's number one priority.
yeah.
and honestly, costs have come down because we're looking at, cloud-based solutions, some different
Yeah.
things. We've upgraded the building permitting software. We recently have updated the recreation management software, the court software. So financial management really underpins everything else that we do. They're long overdue for that.
Wanda, did you have a question or comment on that?
Yeah, that would have been my question is, since we're going to do it, can we get something that's going to be for everybody and yet not cost us $1 million?
This would be accessible to every department. What we've found, I think, as we've evaluated, and I know this to be true in other cities, the integration of all of these things can be somewhat challenging. But right now, I mean, we're working in a green screen DOS-based application for our financial management software. You can't get real-time data. There's no workflow for any processes. There's no reports that can be generated. And so even having the ability, I mean, we're hand keying data out of the payroll system, our third-party payroll provider, and hand keying that in to get it into the general ledger system. At a minimum, with new software, we would be able to have that happen electronically and reduce some of those kinds of times. I know.
And I would say that does also make this a staff retention upgrade as well, right? So
I
we
think
don't
there's
have people
probably
losing
someone
their
on the
mind.
back row who's
Yeah.
giggling about the prospect of that. I mean, and I will say we've managed, but whether that's working through the audit and generate, I mean, the amount of time I think that could just be saved in
Yeah.
that. Is
Joseph?
tremendous.
Yeah, I just have one question about that item in your trade-offs. You say less flexibility than other one-time projects. Are there other one-time projects that I guess really my question is around the flexibility terminology.
So I think that's intended to say that there is a recurring expense with the financial management. There will be hosting expenses and
Got it.
recurring annual subscription fees. Those are things we believe we can absorb into departments' existing line item operating budgets, but it isn't 100% a one-time
One.
expense.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Ben?
Yeah, just thinking ahead about when we say remaining proceeds to future technology around public safety, and forgive me if I missed this discussion already, but what of the public safety sales tax that's not good? So what's the forecast around that? What do we know about the loss of the proceeds from the county on that? And how does that affect our ability to fund public safety tech going forward? And
Well, we have
thinking around all that.
we have always just included that special sales tax, public safety sales tax as a general fund revenue. We've not, some cities earmark it and they set it aside in a separate fund and use it exclusively for police department. We haven't done that. We've let it flow into the general fund, knowing police department is our largest operating department and they've benefited, if not with a specific tie to that, they've certainly benefited from that. What we know is that that existing sales tax will expire in March of 2027, which means ultimately we're losing about $200,000 a year in annual revenue. And so the county has not yet given an indication. They're still working through their options from what we understand. I think they will come back at some point, whether or not that is a renewal that they will have to share with us, whether or not it is a new sales tax that they will recommend sharing with cities is all sort of an unknown at this point. So I think we have to start thinking about and planning in other ways for some of those big expenses that are really outside of our control. And as I know, the records management system is just that's really just evolving still in terms of costs. Chief came sort of moping into my office last week and I said, when does it happen? 28. And I said, okay, we got time. It's not happening this year or next year. So,
Well, I guess just, yeah, I mean,
is that, I don't know if that answers.
well,
your
so
question.
yeah, just thinking ahead and especially as we look forward, I guess we'll have to just wait and see what happens in a lot of ways. But I'm not interested in sort of having no answer for that loss of revenue, and also I'm not interested in jeopardizing our sales tax capacity, and not interested in raising the mill rate any further than we have to. So, we'll have to see where the chips fall. But I don't want to just write that 200,000.
No, but I think what I don't want to do, I think the intent of this would be if we sell that property and we have excess proceeds. So if you look at your general fund summary, you go down to the bottom and you look and see in the fund balance, we assign things so that it doesn't just get lost and it takes a specific action of the council to spend that money. So in effect, we would just earmark it. If you choose to spend it for something else or address those costs another way, we move that and we lose that, but we don't want to lose sight of the fact that that's kind of how it was set aside and what the intent of how to use
Yeah,
it.
that's fair.
Yeah, Debbie?
While we're on public safety, one of the revenue sources we seem to be missing out on, the residents pay, we all pay, is the people who are getting tickets and going to court and not paying. What percent of the tickets that go to court at this point do you think we have no revenue for it?
I think Mr. Carroll can probably better answer that question.
I don't know the percentage off the top of my head. I will say we actually implemented a pretty significant change on this front, and they're in the first quarter of this year. And so previously, basically anyone that was at payment, we were turning them over to collections, and once they went in there, I mean, the debts just really weren't getting paid. So ultimately they get written off. And so we've, along with the judge and court staff, we are negotiating payment plans with folks now within reason. Someone can't be like for 3 years or something like that, but actually a structured, lined out payment program, and have seen immediate returns on that. I think collections were up. I'm not going to remember the numbers off the top of my head, but like it was 40%, I think, for the first quarter, just by instituting that. It has the cascade effect of that, as it has been more of an administrative burden, foot traffic into the police station to pay tickets and everything like that, and lots of phone calls. So, which is fine, but it has been a great change that's actually been seeing that. We can get the numbers in general, but that has been a pretty significant structural shift that has improved that situation.
That's great to know, because I think that was a missing link.
No, absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this one?
Okay, decision package number 4, strategic fleet replacement through lease purchase. So as we looked at this, we would look to recommend figuring out a way to authorize a 5-year lease purchase agreement for approximately $700,000. Something which I'll do here in a minute, to replace the street sweeper, the Ford F-550 truck in the Public Works Department, and 3 Police Department administrative vehicles, again, replaced as hybrids. The annual debt service on that is estimated at about $165,000 a year. So you're paying $125,000 in interest roughly to be able to lease purchase those. We have historically lease purchased the street sweeper. That's something that, just because that tends to be at $300,000. It's in $380,000 here, which is a little bit high because we were anticipating there could be some tariffs on that. Stephanie just told me when she sat down this evening that the tariffs have been removed on the street sweeper, so we would be able to save that. And the manufacturer is offering about a $40,000 trade-in. So we would not resell that street sweeper. We would trade that in and take the reduction in the purchase price. We looked at the Public Works Department's 10-year equipment replacement schedule. This truck was anticipated to be replaced in 2024. So if we replace it in 27, it would be, will have been deferred. What year is that truck? Do you know off the top of your head? 29th. So 12 years old. I mean, one of the things that when I got here 20 years ago, we had trucks that were 20 years old. Literally, some of them had holes in the floorboard, which is really what drove us to try to get on a 10-year replacement schedule. But the primary benefit of the 10-year replacement schedule is that it gives us the opportunity to look at the condition, the maintenance expenses, and to make better informed decisions. So we're able to stretch the life of vehicles oftentimes beyond that 12 years. This is a truck I will tell you that right now, at least tentatively, I don't think that we would put this up for sale. It's something we're still considering. Public Works is sharing this summer because our parks maintenance staff had more people, and Public Works didn't need the vehicle as much. Obviously, they're not plowing snow. It's critical to our snow plowing operations, but they've been able to share that with Parks and Recreation in the summer months. So it's something we need to look at the maintenance records and look at that, but probably something that we would keep in the fleet for Parks and Recreation. And then again, replacement of the admin vehicles. The vehicles that we'd be replacing are 2015s. Again, we've had, in at least one of those, we've replaced a transmission in the last year. So the maintenance expenses are starting to rapidly outpace anything that we would recoup in value. But of the 3 that we would incorporate here, we would be looking to put those on auction and sell those. I would think we might get somewhere in the neighborhood of $10,000 to $12,000 for all 3. Maybe 15. I put it on here as 15. That's probably a little generous. So when we created the equipment reserve and replacement fund, what the intent was, if you're really managing equipment reserve and replacement fund, you're looking at that 10-year replacement schedule and you're funding ahead, right? So you're never having to have the kind of conversations that we're having now where we're looking for pennies in every budget. Unfortunately, we just aren't there. I don't think we are in a situation where we're deferring critical replacements. We've always been able to solve for that problem, whether it's by extending the life or looking at lease purchase. Or you'll recall when we purchased, when we did the debt issue in 2025, we added the frontline patrol vehicles and we were able to do that on a shorter repayment period and save some money over a lease purchase. So we're always looking for ways to continue to replace our highest priority equipment and kind of keep a manageable annual funding commitment. Each of the assets that we're recommending here has a useful life that extends well beyond a 5-year period. When you think about how long we've kept or would anticipate keeping them, so that ensures that we continue to receive value even after the lease would be paid off. This is one where we haven't yet come up with the actual, where should that go? What else would we cut? How would we come up with that? If you look at the general fund summary and you look at the $90,000 kind of to the good that we are in excess fund balance, and if you're comfortable with adding $30,000 to that, if we adjust the solid waste rate fee, the amount that we're looking for to cover that lease payment, at least in this year, is not all that significant. You've got about $40,000 more dollars that I think we could find to do that. But that's one, if you're comfortable with, for us continuing to explore that between now and when we bring you a final recommended budget, we can come up with a more specific plan of how to fund that. That obviously is an ongoing expense in future budgets for the next 5 years. Yes, I think Wanda, and then Ben.
Yeah, Wanda?
I just wanted to, I'm just not clear as to why a lease purchase is beneficial as opposed to just purchasing. Does it take care, does the leasing, do they take care of the maintenance?
Nope, it just allows us to spread the cost out.
So we can't buy something on time?
Depends. If you're talking about, I don't have it's the difference of finding $700,000 in this budget and $165,000.
If I buy a car, I buy it on time. Well, I don't buy it on time, but it can be bought on time.
When you say bought on time, you mean like finance?
Yeah, you set up payments.
Yes, that's what we would be doing here. We would own it. So we're basically financing it. Like if you got a loan if you go buy a car and you get a loan, you're making payments on it. And at the end of, when you make your last payment, you own that car.
Yeah.
Same thing here.
Oh, see, well then why does it called lease purchase?
Government term.
It's just a semantic.
You can do a lease, you could do a lease purchase arrangement if you went and bought a car. They usually call it a lease, but you can do a lease purchase, or you can do a lease and then you turn your car back in at the end of the lease. Yep. No, this is basically we're financing the equipment purchase.
Yeah, Ben?
So in the supplemental request, it says that the F-550 could be extended another year. I give it to me straight, like, do we need it now or do we need it in a year or what's?
I think that's 550, yeah.
Or is that outdated? And there's holes in the floorboards. Okay.
Let us go back and look at the maintenance cost.
I mean, one thing you say is it's critical to snow plowing operations. So
Yeah.
we're not about to like,
We
Yeah.
can't reduce the fleet and we want to make sure that
Yeah.
it's not something that's going to break down.
Yeah.
But we can refine that as we come back.
I mean, if it is
Stages.
at the critical point, that's fine. I just wondered about that line in there. If you're gonna give me a softball for I can save money this year, then you're probably gonna ask about it.
See, we outsmart ourselves sometimes.
And the only other thing is I like just hand me down vehicles because that's cheap. I don't know that I'm all that thrilled about like an F-550 going around to the parks, but it's, it's not the worst fit, but
I think the other thing long-term is, we have to be thoughtful about we're sort of quietly increasing the size of our fleet when we do
Yeah.
that, when we don't. Everybody sitting around and behind me will tell you I'm pretty sensitive to and hawkish on making sure we aren't quietly increasing the size of our fleet. So we'll look at that one. The other thing that I would mention, and kudos to the Public Works Department. So Roland Park is also thinking about replacing or needing to replace a street sweeper. So we had several conversations with them about purchasing, sharing in that, a variety of different arrangements where we would share in the cost, and then we'd each build out this calendar of who got to use it how many weeks out of the year, or we would buy it and they would contract with us for services. I think as we really talked through and looked at the amount of time that we use our street sweeper, which is significantly more than the amount of time that Roland Park uses their street sweeper. And the fact that likely the heavy use periods are going to overlap with
Yeah.
one another. I mean, what did you have? 3 meetings to, if or more, to explore that. So I just want to we ultimately are recommending not to move forward with that. But it was interesting because I think Roland Park is now looking at a different manufacturer on a street sweeper that they might be purchasing. So we'll continue we look at those opportunities as they come up over the course. They're a little bit few and far between sometimes. But we use our sweeper a lot.
I was gonna say, I don't think there's any weaseling out of the sweeper costs, right? It's just a maintenance heavy thing, and
Right.
you use it a lot, and
Yep.
it's special, and what are you gonna do? I think all this makes a lot of sense if you can find a way you're comfortable with the budget impact.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The budget decision package number 5, one-time FCIP debt service. So we've carried debt service for the facility conservation improvements, which is about $250,000 a year, and the general fund, even though the majority of those improvements happened at the community center. Part of that was at the time that we issued all of that, the council was really looking at, and I think still has some desire to really preserve the Parks and Recreation sales tax revenues, particularly for outdoor parks. But as we talked about in a recent work session, and we'll talk about here in just a couple minutes, a lot of competing priorities as all of that comes together. Again, that's not a permanent solution, but that's something if, you could take some combination of that, you could shift all or a portion of that to Parks and Recreation sales tax fund. You could adjust your transfer to streets accordingly. I mean, I think there's some mix and match options in that, if that's something that you even want to consider, or we just continue to pay that debt service out of the general fund. And I believe it pays off in 2036. It was a 15-year debt issue. So that one continues for a while.
Yeah, Debbie?
Looks like there's a $115,000 allocation for Broadmoor Park improvements in 2027. We just did a bunch of improvements. What else will they be doing?
We'll let me get through these and then we'll talk about the CIP.
Remember that playground structure is ancient for one, but yeah, Ben?
The thing that gives me pause on taking the park sales tax dollars is I feel this I don't know, this sort of obligation we have to the community around Beverly Park and how we're gonna shift those square feet, so to speak. And I'm a little apprehensive about just sort of leaning on the sales tax dollars as a little bit of a slushy kind of fund to pay
Yeah.
FCIP, but I'm willing to hear you out on all the moving parts that you keep hinting at.
Yeah, I agree that I would need to hear more. I mean, I've already talked to Laura about this one. This was my least favorite on the budget decision packages. I think,
Yeah, which is why it showed up as number 5.
I think
number 1, 2,
yep,
3,
yep.
and 4.
I think, while allowable, we were pretty broad in our park sales tax fund. I don't think this is the type of thing people think about when they thought they were voting for the, park sales tax fund. And I know some things are put into the CIP and we'll talk about it more, but I think our parks are gonna need a lot more work than what's currently in the CIP, so I think the fund balance that's listed in the currently shown version is going to put a couple playgrounds in and you're gonna have nothing there anymore. So I don't love that. I think there's a lot of parks work. I hadn't even honestly thought again about the Beverly Park piece too, but that's a very good point, Ben. And we've talked about all the trail improvement projects and all of that. So yeah, I understand if it has to be done at the end of the day, but it's not my favorite.
Goal with these was to say, this is where, without having to look at eliminating positions, reducing service levels, this is where there's any flexibility within that general fund. So again, and when you see recommended action, that's not necessarily that's the action that it would take.
Yep.
And then the last decision package is, again, one that's not particularly popular, but that would just be a temporary reduction in the general fund reserve level by 1% to 2%. That usually generates us, because we reserve 25% of annual general fund revenues. So a 1% reduction is going to gain us, somewhere in the neighborhood typically of $250,000+. We haven't played around with that. And again, I think we want to stay close to that 25% level. We can also look at if we end a year better. So for example, if we end 2026 better than what we're estimating here, that we'll have excess reserve funds that could be reallocated to a variety of different things as well. So we always just want to keep that ahead of you. We've done that. I think in the 2026 budget, we actually reduced to 24%, or was it 25? Yeah, you took a 1% reduction. I think we brought that back up to 25% and what we're showing you in estimated. So we've restored that reduction that we took last year in the budget adoption process already in these numbers. The only thing that we exclude from that is we're not reserving on one-time revenues like the $250,000 from Encore for that. That over reserves us. And when you think about how much flexibility we might want or need in the general fund budget. So again, this is something that could be done strategically. We need to be sensitive to our credit rating. We wouldn't want to probably do this at any point that we are looking at issuing debt. And we also want to think about the general fund is really the only fund where we reserve anything. So if we have a big overage in a capital project, if we have something somewhere else that goes over, this is where we would look to see and do that. Okay. Next slide, please. So CIP program areas. So we talked about on July 8th, we kind of talked about all the revenue streams that come into the 5-year capital improvement program. I want to touch on just a couple of things this evening. And then we will spend more time next week at the committee meeting on, I suspect, just based on what you're already starting into, this evening, that you'll have some more specific questions about some of the projects. But I do want to just highlight, so what we're showing you now on these program plans is where I'd like for you to kind of focus is just that very bottom line, ending fund balances across all of these programs. So if we start with the stormwater program, the big project that we know that we have is in front of us is the Rock Creek Channel improvement project. That project has actually increased over the last 18 months, and we're sitting at about a $15 million engineer's estimate. We started under 10 million. And when we bring that back, we'll have a whole separate kind of piece on that. A lot of the work that we've been doing is how do we tackle that? One of the things that we've done is we had been supplementing the street program with stormwater revenues. We pulled that back in 26 and 27 to help fund the cost. And again, we haven't bid the project. This is an engineer's estimate. We've been looking at, there was lighting that was included along the trail. That was one of the recommendations coming out of the Rock Creek Corridor study. I know Stephanie and I were just talking today. She's been looking at a solar lighting option, which reduces the cost by more than 50%. And we've gone back to the Johnson County Stormwater Management Advisory Program and asked for increases in the amount that we're receiving, and we've been tentatively approved. It's been through the watershed process. So we've been able to recoup a large portion of that through other people's dollars as well. What you see is just based on where we are in the year and the length of time that it is taking to get all of the utility relocation agreements negotiated. We talked about, and stream mitigation credits and all of those other things that we've talked about. Our hope would be to bid this towards the end of the year and get this out there. But we're also showing, if you see the stormwater program plan, based on where we understand the status of litigation to be in 2026, we believe that there will be a resolution through a foreclosure action sometime in 2027, which is why we feel comfortable showing that special assessment coming back in 2027. That allows us to we've got that built in for the rest of the 5-year program. So if you go to the bottom line here, we've got some really positive numbers in the out years to consider some of the localized drainage projects that we've talked about, Apollo Gardens, to think about restoring some of that stormwater funding to help supplement the street program, all of those kinds of things. Street program, 2026, I think we all know what the big street project is for 2026. That would be the Johnson Drive project. And then for the residential street program for 2026 is effectively completed. For 2027, we would be picking up the 2 streets in the 26 program that were bid alternates and completing those. They've been designed already. Then I know we are working internally through the updated PCI inventory. And so once we have some recommendations as a staff, I'll bring that back to you and have some input on, does that reshuffle anything in kind of the 5-year program? But we've still plugged in essentially the commitment of $2 million a year to residential streets.
I had a question about, and I hate to even ask because I know Public Works has been working their tails off, but I haven't seen as much patching going on this summer. And I know like my immediate neighborhood area is really bad. And I've seen some other areas around town too. And I know there's usually a lot of that activity, but I know there's been a lot going on. I didn't know if that was a budgetary thing or staff resources, or if we're still going to get some of that this fall.
Absolutely. You want to come up here so you're in front of the microphone? And
yeah, we've had a few things come up, but we're still on track. We track our tonnage of asphalt, so on the residential side. So we're looking to still have one of our better years. It just might be in different areas of town.
Nice.
So sometimes in some areas you'll see us, we spend a lot of time there and then we move to another side of town. But on our tonnage and what we're doing, we'll probably surpass what we did last year.
Great.
So we're on track.
And again, regardless of the level of transfer that we look at into the street program, we know we have planning that needs to happen prior to us getting to 28 and 29. Then as we move into the parks.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
If we have any streets that kind of overlap, like Johnson Drive at Ash, which is Roland Park, do we ever have any ability to kind of share expenses on Johnson Drive since it goes into Roland Park?
I believe when we did the UBAS treatment on that section of Johnson Drive, they paid. So there's a proportionate share that happens. So if you think about, we recently did like a little tiny piece, right? Well, they were doing that cul-de-sac and we did that little tiny piece. So we're in regular conversation. Many of our CARS projects will, the 63rd Street or the Knoll project next year, there's a portion of that that's Prairie Villages when we did 63rd Street. So there's a lot of that coordination.
Thanks.
Okay, Parks and Recreation Program. We may have missed taking the $115,000 out of Broadmoor. We might have missed one. What we did is, and I will have this done for you for next week. is staff had been really working to try to plug in and guess about park improvements, outdoor park improvements, anything that was coming out of the Tran and Thomas study for the community center that we showed you recently. And so we decided we were going to take a different approach at this point, and we're going to pull those out and show you the bottom line, right? Because we were sort of arbitrarily thinking about old conceptual plans or how we might balance that with other things in the budget. So we've pulled those out. What I'll bring you back is kind of the list of what all of those things are with the dollar value. And as we think about probably moving more so into the 28 budget process and beyond, how you all want to put those things together. But so we wanted to show you kind of what that balance is annually. We left all of the what we would consider to be more routine maintenance projects. And again, we'll give you a list of those. So we don't want to stop doing maintenance altogether at the pool and our outdoor parks and all of that. So in 2026 in Parks and Recreation, we're still talking about it. Actually, right now, that number includes a Streamway Park trail patch and reseal. We've completed resurfacing of the Rock Creek asphalt trail. Conceptual park planning, we would recommend picking up for Anderson Park. So we did conceptual park planning several years ago. It excluded Anderson Park at the time. Broadmoor Park, we need to add back in probably in 27. I don't think there's any reason at this point. I think it's premature to conceptually plan there because of the potential market relocation. With the Rock Creek Channel project being delayed, we'll likely be at Broadmoor for another season. Plus, I think we need some direction on what's happening with the block project because the potential for a development immediately across the street could very dramatically change what goes into that conceptual planning process. So going ahead to get started on Anderson, which is also a land and water conservation, a park where we've used land and water conservation funds, which means any improvements there have to get approval, even if it's just replacing a playground with a playground. And then it also aligns us with timing in fall of 2027 to potentially apply for land and water conservation fund grants for that. So I think our minds think about replacement of the playground structure at Anderson probably being the next likely big improvement in an outdoor park, but really picking up that conceptual park planning process. One revenue that I don't think we showed in here. No, you did. So we've plugged in 2028 at the $500,000, which is Millhouse's contribution for purchase of Beverly Park. So again, I think that gives us some time to think about how do you want to use that? How do you want to use that in your outdoor parks? Do you want to use that to make any of the improvements along the Rock Creek corridor trail or the Rock Creek Trail corridor? So we'll be coming back with a lot more conversation around how do you really want to plug and play projects in the parks? We have in 2026 estimated, you'll see the maintenance and operations at the Powell Community Center of $820,000. A big chunk of that is roof replacement for the community center. We're continuing to evaluate solar options. I think our opportunities for solar are shrinking based on some structural evaluations that we've had done of the building, but we'll bring those back to you. The number that's reflected here does not include solar. We're also looking at how do we quantify the energy savings that we've received through the FCIP program? What does the payoff look like on solar? So we'll need to bring that back to you all in. If we thought we were going to be able to do it, that was going to be at about $1.2 million, right, in total between that just roof replacement, which is about $700,000. So still a lot of moving parts and pieces on that, but the roof replacement is a big sort of maintenance item that's probably appreciated when you don't have the buckets at the community center, but not necessarily something that everybody touches and sees and feels. So we'll provide you more detail there. We'll look, Councilmember Kring, I think we just missed taking out whatever the Broadmoor Park improvement was.
Oh, it's okay. As we get to our wish list, one of the things I'd like to see a concerted effort around recycling in the parks. We missed a big This is like the 5th year in a row. People don't pay any attention to those. So I think we need educational forums prior to those events. So we start looking at more recycling. I tried picking them up and then I thought, nah, it's not gonna work. But it'd be nice to have all the recycles in the recycle bin and not mix with trash. We don't have enough recycle. bins.
The memo kind of went through the maintenance projects, didn't give you the dollar amount, which we can give you, but it talked about the maintenance projects in 27 for all those category streets, stormwater and parks and recreation. One thing that is included in 2027, and I may ask Justin to speak to it. So you'll recall we were part of a larger regional grant to install EV chargers at Broadmoor and at the community center. Those costs have been swinging wildly all over the place over the last several months. But I think you've landed there's based on the numbers that we've been provided within the last couple of weeks, what's reflected in here would allow us to continue to, I think it was about a $30,000 total increase over what we had budgeted last year for our share of that. To get to EV chargers at Broadmoor and 2 at the community center. And I don't know if you have anything else you want to add about that.
No, I would just say that kind of similar to, it was, for Johnson Drive, we had to do STP funding and you put in an application so many years in advance. That was the same thing with this project that the county took the lead on. So I believe the grant was submitted in 2023. And so it was one of those things where once they finally got approved, and then there was the things at the federal level with sustainability and whether or not those grants were going to flow through, all of that uncertainty. So just all kinds of back and forth. And then design costs finally started undertaking. And they ran into the cost of electricity has just gone up. And what I mean by that is not necessarily the equipment itself, but just literally getting transmission lines. Like when you're once you actually get on site and you figure out where the nearest line is and everything like that. Some of the numbers that they came back to us with were very crazy, as Laura alluded to. They have drastically sharpened their pencil, that they being the county and the engineers that they're working with, and cities have been working with them and evaluating if they want to include all of their sites and whatnot. And there is some additional MARC funding of CMAQ funding available, which has helped take that, which it is more than doubled is what the city share was going to be from the original budget. And that's come down to about 30,000. So the original budget for the city's share was just under 50,000. So all in would be about 80. That's the number we do have plugged in right now into the CIP. So we can absorb it. So that has come back still over, but much more within line. But it just was kind of one of those processes just with that long of a horizon, trying to budget for something 4 years out and recognizing that we are kind of experiencing that. And so trying to work around getting real numbers and construction costs and everything.
Yeah, Wanda?
So do we have to put in those chargers?
We don't. If we were not to move forward with the installation and the construction, our sunk cost because of the design are
We'll have to form on I think about $20,000 total
That-
design sunk cost. Yeah.
we would not get back.
We would have to contribute. Yeah.
But do we have to put in as many? Couldn't we just cut down the number and save some money, or no?
Yeah, you could if you were trying to achieve real savings, that you would eliminate a site. You would get some savings from eliminating the charger, but the major cost driver, and it's primarily the Broadmoor Park location, is the transmission line to get to the chargers. So if you were committing to the site, you could eliminate one charger at the site, but really the reality is if you were looking for savings, it would be more prudent to eliminate a site entirely than to just reduce the chargers.
That sounds good to me.
Debbie?
Do we have any way to calculate how many people go to individual parks? Is there any way to come up with because I think you're trying to be fair across the board with each park gets X, Y, Z, but it's also dependent on how many people are using a given park, or is it the other way around? People would use it if they had more equipment and more
Yeah. I mean, if you
I
look at
think
how
it
many
works
more
both
people are using.
directions. I think they do the park, and Penn, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your park staff does periodic counts of users in the park. And then we also have the trail counters, which again, if I'm doing multiple loops, it's going to count me every time I pass the trail counter. But I think you recently shared some statistics about that. But I think it's exactly what you said, Councilmember Kring. It is the more attractive you make a park, the higher the increased usage you're going to see. And if you just look at the amenities that were added to Mohawk and the amount of usage that park gets.
It used to be vacant and now it's always busy.
I think the location makes a difference too. I think it's much more accessible to go to Mohawk or Broadmoor than it is Streamway. I just don't think it's
Yeah.
accessible, but.
And we've been working with a local business owner who has some thoughts about some improvements to Streamway Park. Penn and I recently had a call. Did you fix it? Okay. I had to figure out how to override it. Okay, good. It was 78 degrees in here the other night for the planning commission meeting. It was warm. And so Penn and I had a conversation a week or so ago. We said, there's a lot of questions. We're going to send you a list of questions that we know that we have and that we know the council will have as we continue. So we'll bring that forward as well. And thinking about that proposal, there's the potential for grant funding there. One thing I did not mention, I think it's in the memo, but I want to note this on the street program side is Stephanie has applied for Safe Streets for All implementation funding just for a grant just shy of about $1 million. We hired Burns and McDonald to help us put that grant together. She secured grant funding to cover the expense of that. And then so then on our match on the $1 million grant was going to be about $200,000. And she got notification last week that we have been awarded money through the state to cover all but 10,000 of that $200,000. So. Yes, but should we get the $1 million, we have everything else covered, but that's not included anywhere there. But at the end of the day, that's $10,000 to potentially make $1 million worth of improvements coming out of the Safe Streets for All study. So
Sam, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just,
Sorry.
to Debbie's question, Waterworks, this is my notes from June. Waterworks accounted for roughly 32% of all the trail passes in Mission, and Mohawk was 25%. So chicken or the egg, is it because it's a new park? Is it because it's a location? It's probably both. Yes, and so.
Thank you.
School kids.
Right.
Yep.
And that's the big, parents pick up kids from there too.
Okay, let's move on to the other funds and then we'll be finished this evening. My goal is to have you out of here before 8, so I think we can still make it. I know, I was shooting for 7:30, but that's just not realistic. Again, as I mentioned, this is not every other fund. We have about 20 separate funds that we're required to maintain just because of fiduciary, statutory, regulatory requirements. So we don't bore you because you don't have the discretion of spending revenues and expenses, and some of those funds are just dictated by other things outside of all of our control. But we like to touch on some of these major funds. In the memo, we talk about the equipment reserve and replacement fund. Same thing I said, it's not functioning as originally intended. Our goal would still be to look at a long-term, that still remains a long-term financial objective to make sure we can strengthen kind of our asset management and smooth out those peaks and valleys.
Yeah, Sam?
Do you have, I guess, do we have any way of knowing at this time at what point that would be functional?
No.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the list that we've got in front of us, if you add to that list, even just the things we talked about coming from the police department, we still haven't factored in a conversation around a new city hall police station. Still a lot of other things that all put pressure on that will be, we've had a lot of roll up our sleeves work sessions this year. I would expect that to continue through 2027. We have a lot of really kind of significant issues we need to talk about. So the MCBB fund, Councilmember Kring talked about that at the beginning. That is, we're required to have that fund to account for transient guest tax revenues. We have our one hotel, Woodspring Suites, that does generate transient guest tax. Some other things it generates for other departments. But it does generate that revenue. We have to use that revenue to support, it's really designed to support attracting and bringing people into our community. So the majority of those funds have been used historically to pay for the Mission magazine. So we're distributing that, and we transitioned last year and are recommending maintaining the Business Improvement Grant Program out of the MCVB fund. We went for several years with nobody taking advantage of that fund, but I think we've approved 3 and have another one in the works this year. Is that correct? Business Improvement Grant.
Yes.
Yes. So I think as we've had Fluffy Fresh, Rock Creek, I can't remember. Anyway, we've seen more interest in that. We've done, I think, more promotion. One thing I didn't touch on I'll give you the actual statistics next week is as we've had the mill levy increases, you've asked us to do a better job of promoting our citizen rebate program. You'll see in the budget, we are close to doubling the amount that we're paying back in this year. So we're averaging about 30 applications every year and about $25,000. We're at, there's no official cutoff of that, but we're at about 50 applications that have been processed this year, and pushing closer to $50,000 in rebates to our citizens. So I don't know, we mailed the postcard directly to all of the households. I think that was a benefit. Minimal expense to do that. So we've seen a good return on that investment. TIF and CID funds, we have to, every time we have an incentive project, we have to maintain a separate fund for that. Money coming in and money going out is controlled by our development agreement. So that's just a separate accounting mechanism. Special alcohol fund. So we receive alcohol tax that's passed through from the state. A third goes into the general fund, a third into the special alcohol fund, and a third goes into the special parks and recreation fund. Special parks and recreation fund is considered underneath the umbrella of the parks capital improvement program. But the special alcohol fund is restricted to programs whose principal purpose is alcohol and drug abuse prevention or treatment. So a third of our alcohol tax money for 2027 is estimated at about $146,000. $75,000 of that is allocated to the United Community Services Drug and Alcoholism Council. So they administer a grant program. We ultimately have discretion. We review all the potential grantees and we can adjust our contribution accordingly. But it relieves us of that administrative burden of having to determine how to allocate those dollars. And then we also fund the mental health co-responder program, which we share two co-responders serving Mission and Merriam. Merriam for several years has secured grant funds. We're unsure. I don't think we haven't received notice yet about grant funds after the budget adoption, but we have sufficient funds built up even without the grant support that we're able to continue to fund our portion of the mental health co-responder program. And then the solid waste utility fund, we've talked about already this evening, so I won't belabor that. The other ones that I didn't include here are Rock Creek Drainage, are 2 drainage districts. So I think we've talked about you all serve as the governing body for Rock Creek Drainage District number 1, which is the Gateway site, and Rock Creek Drainage District number 2, which essentially follows the Rock Creek Channel from Roland Drive down to Lamar. And there's an additional mill levy that's assessed within those drainage districts that can be used citywide. So revenues there can be used outside of the drainage district. So we've, right now, the drainage district number 1 is the taxes are delinquent. So that includes the drainage district taxes, but it only generates at this point $30,000 a year or so in theory. And then Rock Creek Drainage District number 2 generates about between $75,000 and $100,000. So we're really just allocating those drainage district revenues to stormwater debt service at this point. think that hits all of the other, their next budget conversation is next Wednesday, which means you're gonna get another packet sometime before then. I think with, like I said, we'll go back and take some direction and show you some options in working some of the drainage decision packages into the next round of the budget. But I think appreciate your participation, contributions, and I think we're getting close to being able to have a budget that we can confidently recommend to you for
I think
consideration.
I saw a hand down at the end.
Yeah, I expect to be unpopular here, but I'm thinking about this package number one with the solid waste utility fee, and just looking back, I remembered where I got my numbers from. I was looking at the Overland Park solid waste study, and they looked at a lot of municipal contracts and HOAs around the area, and even with this increase, like we're below everyone else, not just everyone else. And so I'm just along the vein of like with our outdoor pool and our community center, we don't aim to be the cheapest rate around nor the most expensive. I wonder if there's room to adjust, or if that's a signal that we're lower than we should be. That's all.
I'm gonna stay unpopular.
I would offer a thought. I've always, and I understand that. I think my sense, standing on this side of the podium and listening to you all for the years that I have, is that you like to look at comprehensively everything that we're doing as it relates to our taxpayers. So what's the mill levy impact? What's the solid waste utility impact? What's the stormwater utility impact, et cetera? It feels like we're never going to get really far ahead on the solid waste side. And I feel like if we can begin to catch up incrementally and look at that decision, we still have one of the highest stormwater utility fees in Johnson County. Fully support that, understand that we have tremendous stormwater needs in our 2.5 square miles. I think we still have mill levy challenges. So I feel like totally understand what you're saying, but I feel like it's a little bit of a balance. And for even if you won 100%, you're not going to generate, another 5, well.
Well, sure. I mean, we break it out as a separate fee for some reason. So
Because
we talk about it as a separate fee here.
That's it.
Yeah.
The problem, and that's the
Sure.
only reason it's broken out as a separate fee. Stormwater utility fee is the same way.
Yeah.
Which I guess we haven't, I guess I should say that. We haven't recommended an increase in the stormwater utility fee, but it's in the same boat now that I'm standing here talking to you all at 8:00 on Wednesday night, as needing to be certified to the county. So our intent would be to certify the stormwater utility fee at the same rate as we're paying currently, which is $336 a year. Right? Yes, $336. So I get what you're, trash. I just think we can't make enough money up on trash to
Sure.
think about that, but doesn't mean we shouldn't consider it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we can take that tack on every line item. So
No, true.
Yeah, Wanda?
Just have a question, which is off the budget. I just wanted to, can I do that or no?
Yeah.
No work session.
Okay, what is that new equipment on Knoll and Johnson Drive? There's something on that pole right in front of the,
Traffic camera.
is it a
Traffic
traffic
counts.
cam? Oh, is that what you talked about before?
No, yeah, I think that's the new,
It's the Operation Green Light equipment
Oh.
that was installed, part of our Johnson Drive, traffic signal enhancement project that was grant funded. I think I gave us an update about that a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I just hadn't seen it before. And do we have new businesses coming in? Because it seems like there's some storefronts that are changing.
We'll have, when Robin is back next week, she's the keeper of all of our,
Oh.
what businesses are moving.
Okay.
She gave a
So
big
wait-
update last time.
Wait till the A team is back next week and can give you that. Just a couple of other things very quickly that we won't go over, but I know, in the last meeting, we were talking about the amount of exempt property that we have in Mission, being a significant portion of that. In your clipped packet up there, you have this sheet, which is a sheet that we get from the appraiser. If you go to the bottom line, it's going to show you that 14.13% of our overall assessed valuation, it comes from assessed or exempt properties, which means we're collecting nothing. There's also a handout that comes from the appraiser's office that shows you broken down by property type. It's the one that looks like this. It tells you how many property counts we have, some of the appraised values, and the percent, so 25 to 26, and then the value change in that. So you can actually see overall, our residential real property went down by 2.8%. And then this is the other handout. And again, this is really more just for information. One side of this is how many homes, single family homes or residential counts we have within a particular price range or an appraised value range in our community. So if you look at this, we have nothing that is appraised at less than $150,000. And so upwards, we have 2 at over $1.1 million. The bulk of our single family homes are appraised currently between $300,000 and $500,000. So that's just kind of I find it a little bit of an interesting. The other side is actually more detail that within our community, including sales and new construction, how many properties experienced what percentage increase or decrease overall. So if you go to the middle of this, for example, there were 11 properties that had no change in value between 25 and 26. There were 608 who had a decrease of. So it's just kind of interesting when you think about a lot of what you hear from your constituents and our residents about property taxes rising and rising. And so it's interesting to kind of see how it moves by percentage increase. Now, I'd love to see that tied to the value of the home, but pretty granular. So that's all I have this evening. Again, appreciate your time. All right. We'll continue next week. And the mayor will not, you're not here at the committee meeting, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for staying.
We are adjourned.